Hello, my name is Stacy Furness, and I'm a professor at the University of Wisconsin River Falls. In my role as professor in the Health and Human Performance Department, my main responsibility is the program coordinator for the Health Education Teacher Education program. I teach classes throughout the health education program and support student teachers, and so I'm able to see health education teacher candidates throughout the entire preparation process. Today I'm happy to be here to talk about addressing skills, behaviors, beliefs, and norms in health education for the edTPA. The first question you might have is, why do we need to address health skills, personal beliefs, and group norms in health education? There was a time that health educators mainly focused on facts. We used to basically teach as many health facts to our students as possible. But over time, we came to understand that a huge part of making healthy decisions is having health skills and addressing personal beliefs and group norms. And so now when we are teaching health education, we need to help students learn those skills, address beliefs and group norms to ensure that they are choosing healthy behaviors and avoiding risk behaviors. The National Health Education Standards are really our guiding document as health educators to tell us what students should know and be able to do in health education. The National Health Education Standards, of course, are core concepts: accessing valid and reliable resources, analyzing influences, communication, decision-making, goal setting, self-management, and advocating. And when we look at those National Health Education Standards, we realize that Standards 2 through 8 are related to skills, beliefs, and group norms. So as health educators, we need to recognize that the majority of the standards that we are responsible for ensuring that our students can demonstrate are related to skills, beliefs, and group norms. So that should be a major priority for health educators. The other reason we should focus on skills, beliefs, and group norms is the edTPA. Many teacher candidates now have to complete the edTPA, or Education Teacher Performance Assessment, during student teaching in order to become licensed in their state or to successfully complete their teacher education program. With that in mind, if we want teacher candidates to be successful on the edTPA and we take a look at the requirements, we see right away in the very first question of the planning commentary that teacher candidates are asked to describe the central focus of their learning segment, but then, given the central focus, describe how the standards and performance indicators and learning objectives within the learning segment address the use of functional health knowledge, the demonstration of health-related skills, and the development of personal beliefs and analysis of group norms to help students adopt and maintain healthy behaviors. So right from the beginning, we see that in order for teacher candidates to be successful on the edTPA, they must plan for a learning segment that addresses not only functional health knowledge, but also skills or beliefs or group norms. The other thing that they need to do for the edTPA is explain how their plans build on each other to help students make connections between the use of functional health knowledge, the demonstration of health-related skills, and the development of personal beliefs and analysis of group norms. So again, throughout the learning segment, our teacher candidates are being asked to show how their lessons make connections between skills, beliefs, and norms. So it's very, very critical as we think about health education that we plan with skills, beliefs, and norms in mind. The next question you might have is, how do I teach about health-related skills, personal beliefs, and group norms? If we were only teaching facts, we would probably use very different teaching strategies or instructional strategies and instructional supports. But if we're teaching skills and we're teaching about beliefs and group norms, there are specific strategies that are much more effective at ensuring that we influence a student's health behaviors and help them make healthy decisions and avoid risk behaviors. So with that in mind, let's take a look at a few of the health-related skills. Of course, in health education, there are many, many health-related skills. I've just listed a few here. But just some of the health-related skills that we teach in health education are refusal skills to get out of risky situations, communication skills, such as iMessages, the decision-making model or decision-making, analyzing valid and reliable resources, especially on the internet, how to read and analyze a food label, and goal setting. In order to teach health-related skills, here is a good formula to think about as we're teaching those skills. The first thing we usually want to do is teach the critical cues. Most health-related skills have some very important steps that we need to follow, or cues that will help us remember the steps to follow in order to complete the skill. After we've taught those critical cues, as teachers, a great idea is to model those steps for the students so they can see how the skill is really demonstrated. Next, we'd like for the students to practice the steps. They should have an opportunity to work through the steps for the skill, perhaps given a scenario. After they've practiced the steps, then they should have an opportunity to get feedback. We should provide feedback to the students. When we think about something like goal setting, for example, when we ask students to write a SMART goal, very rarely do they get all of the critical pieces of a SMART goal correct the first time they try it. So it's a great way for us to take a look at what they're doing right and what they're still struggling on to help them in that specific skill. After we've given them feedback, they should have an opportunity to revise and practice the skill again. This is a great way to ensure that they are really understanding and able to apply the skill to health situations. Here's an example for teaching the decision-making model in an alcohol, tobacco, and other drug learning segment. One of the first things we might do is review the functional health knowledge on ATOD. So we might review what are health risks associated with alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs, what are short and long-term consequences, what about addiction, all of that functional health knowledge related to ATOD. Next, we would want to teach the steps to the decision-making model. We'd want to point out each of the critical steps and how they possibly can be demonstrated using the decision-making model. Next, as a teacher, we can model the use of the decision-making model in an ATOD scenario. So we might apply some of that functional health knowledge in the decision-making process in a specific ATOD scenario and show them how it's done. Then we want them to practice. So one way we might do that is we might assign groups and give those groups scenarios related to alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs and have them apply the decision-making model. And then, after they've done that, they could present their findings to class. As a class, we could listen to those presentations, and we, as well as the other students in class, could give them feedback. What steps of the decision-making model did they apply well? What steps could use some more work, could be strengthened in the future? And then finally, we might want to give students some individual scenarios that they can work on and apply the feedback that we gave to use the decision-making model to once again show us that they've really mastered the decision-making model. As you can see, there's a whole sequence here, and it probably would take multiple days for us to go through this entire process of teaching the skill of decision-making. But that's where you really start to see the connections. That usually if we're really strongly teaching a skill, it probably isn't going to occur in one day. That we're going to make connections between the functional health knowledge and the skill throughout the entire learning segment. So you can see these steps taking time and maybe taking multiple days or even 3 days or more of a learning segment to teach a single skill. The other area is teaching about personal beliefs and group norms. So some of the areas where we might address beliefs and norms could be where students assess beliefs about their own level of risk. How much at risk are they for becoming sick because of a behavior that they are engaging in, or becoming injured, or even dying? How about beliefs about their own personal values? We know that this influences healthy and unhealthy decisions, so it's important for students to review those. Common misperceptions. Students have so many misperceptions about health, and so addressing those. Addressing what their peers think. We know that if students realize that their peers have positive feelings about health behaviors, that can be a very positive influence on their own health behaviors. Or that sometimes peers have some of the same concerns that they did. And how do others influence my behaviors? So thinking about analyzing influences is really important in beliefs and norms. So how do we teach beliefs and norms? We should provide an opportunity to consider the issue. So students really need to think about their own personal beliefs, and how do they begin to do that? Well, they might review a current events article, one that deals with someone very similar to them in age, maybe someone in their own community. So they start to realize that these things are very real and relatable and can happen to them. They might complete a health inventory. This is a great way to help students assess their own risks for certain behaviors, for certain health risks that they might not even be aware of. They could look at certain statistics about students from their age group, the Youth Risk Behavior Student Survey, and certainly scenarios help students to really think about all of the things involved in an issue and might really help them address their own beliefs and group norms. Providing an opportunity to discuss and reflect is also really important when dealing with personal beliefs and group norms. You might want students to do a think, pair, share to start to review some of their own thoughts and group norms about a topic. A whole class discussion can really get students to start looking at peer influences and norms. And a journal reflection can help students really personalize the information that they learn that day and really bring it down to their own lives and make some applications to their own lives, which could really help them address personal beliefs as well. The next question is, how do I ensure that my plans build on each other to help students make connections between the use of functional health knowledge, the demonstration of health-related skills, and the development of personal beliefs and analysis of group norms to help them adopt and maintain healthy behaviors? It is very important that through the learning segment, the connections are very clearly seen. So it's not just that you're addressing skills, beliefs, norms, and functional health knowledge, but that you're making connections to these ideas across the learning segment. So here's one example of a learning segment that addresses mental health and mental well-being and accessing valid and reliable resources to help address mental health concerns. So in this learning segment, on day one, the students begin by reviewing the health triangle, the connections between mental, physical, and social health. And then they start to discuss specifically the connection between mental health and the importance of others areas of health, including describing mental health and mental health concerns. They'll also talk about things like stress and mental illness and how those things can have an impact on health. Using scenarios, students will identify signs and consequences of leaving mental health concerns untreated. So not using good coping mechanisms in stress, or not getting help for mental illnesses, and how that can really impact a person's lives. We will very briefly on day one start to discuss the importance of how we address mental health concerns, as that will continue on into day two. On day two, students will begin by reviewing day one, the impact of mental health on other areas of health and why it's so important to address mental health concerns. We will then brainstorm ways that we could help individuals with mental health concerns, including all of the resources that are available. And we will talk about why it is so important that the resources that we choose or recommend are good resources, are resources that are going to help and not hurt us. We'll describe the criteria and steps for evaluating valid and reliable resources on day 2. We'll take a variety of online resources, and in cooperative learning groups, they are going to apply the criteria for accessing valid and reliable resources to the resources they've been assigned, and that'll give an opportunity to practice using and accessing and analyzing valid and reliable resources. They'll then report back to the whole class, and we will provide them feedback on how they were able to do that. On day 3, each cooperative learning group will be assigned complex scenarios. These are scenarios of individuals with some type of mental health concerns. The cooperative learning group must identify not only the mental health concern based on the functional knowledge they learned on day 1, including the signs and ways the concern is affecting other areas of their life, but then they're going to be asked to use the criteria from day 2 to recommend multiple valid and reliable resources to help the individual. So they will be applying the functional health knowledge and skills from day 1 and day 2. And they will discuss how addressing that might impact their overall health and well-being. So seeing the benefit of accessing valid and reliable resources for those with mental health concerns. Why do we need to make these connections between functional health knowledge, skills, and norms over a learning segment? Because if students can make connections, it really helps them apply functional health knowledge to skills, beliefs, and norms. It helps them make sense of why it is important to learn the functional health knowledge and the connection it's going to have to those skills or beliefs and norms. It really helps them deepen their understanding. So it helps them understand at a higher level the skills and the functional health knowledge. It helps them see where they might make connections to that in their own lives. It helps them reinforce the material so that one day, if they really need to use this outside of the classroom, they might be able to do that. In addition, for the edTPA, we want to make sure that these connections are written in the lesson plans and commentary and made very clear to the scorer. Don't ever leave it up to the scorer to guess the connections. The teacher candidate completing the edTPA needs to make these connections very, very clear in the edTPA. So there's no doubt that there's clear connections from day 1 to day 2, from day 2 to day 3, explaining how the lessons build upon each other, how they build using functional health knowledge and connections to skills, beliefs, and group norms. There's a lot of resources out there to help you if you are a health teacher or you work with health teacher candidates. This is just a few different resources. Some are free and some you would need to purchase. There are textbooks that are very, very helpful. Lesson Planning for Skills-Based Health Education is a great resource. Essentials of Teaching Health Education and Skills-Based Health Education are just some textbooks which really drive home the point of making sure that we teach in ways that address skills, beliefs, and group norms. So those are excellent textbooks. Shape America has some activity ideas for skills-based health education. And if you are working with teacher candidates, it's really important to look to the national standards for initial health education, teacher education. Those can be found on Shape America, and they are a wonderful resource. I've also recently completed an online digital resource for teacher candidates. It's the Health Education edTPA Preparation Guide, and it addresses not only teaching skills, beliefs, and norms, but it actually helps teacher candidates as they complete all 3 tasks of the edTPA. And there are some examples of actual samples of edTPAs that teacher candidates can take a look at and help inform them as they get ready for and complete the edTPA. At this point, I'd like to say thank you for attending my presentation and good luck with your health education. Thank you.